Hey y'all, it's your girl Maxine from Ministry and Wellness. Thank you so much for joining me today. And we are in for another episode talking about life insurance. Aren't you so excited to talk about life insurance? Everybody wants to talk about it. No, not. They really don't. But my job is just to try to make it a little easier. I could do that for you, right? If I give you some information, will that help? Okay, I hope so. So today we're going to get into it. So we're going to talk about the 5 things that you need to consider before you purchase life insurance. And I know many of you might have gone online and you put your information in, and then next thing you know, you get 1,000 calls, and you're like, forget it. You know what? It's just too overwhelming. Forget it. I won't think about it. But life insurance is very important. So we got to make sure that we are protecting our loved ones. Life insurance is not for us, it's for the people that we're leaving behind. So just always keep that in mind. Okay, so let's get into it. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is what is the main thing that you need to decide how much coverage you may need. And that can all depend on what your household looks like. So let's just say you're a middle-aged person, maybe between maybe 35, 45, you're married, you still have children in school, you want to make sure that they get through college, God forbid anything happens to you, right? So you might get like a term insurance policy. I'll kind of go over the difference between that, between term and whole life. So you might just get like a term policy. Sure, it's inexpensive, your health is pretty good, and you're covered. Okay, so that's the first thing that you want to consider. So think about, your household. Do you have a mortgage? If something happens to you and you have a spouse, is she going to be able to carry on the bills? Does she need to sell the house? You just want to make sure that you make that she's comfortable enough or he's comfortable enough. Either way, that God forbid something happens, maybe they want to take off time to grieve. They can take off a few months. So you want to make sure that that money is cushioned for them. So the first thing is to decide how much coverage you may need. All right. The second thing that you want to decide is how long do you need the life insurance? Again, you may just want to keep it long enough to make sure that the kids are off to college and it's like, hey, they're able to fend for themselves. They got careers now. And now maybe it's just you and the wife at home. Or things do happen along the way where maybe one of the spouses passed away and it's just yourself. So there's so many different scenarios. So it's always good to kind of go back and kind of revamp the life insurance policy. I've heard of people having policies from 1971 and hasn't looked at their life insurance policy since. And so you want to make sure that you're checking in and that you're, getting with a broker. Maybe your broker is no longer in the business, but call the company and see what they can do for you as far as your policy. Okay. So how long do you need it? So let me give you another scenario. So let's just say, for instance, you have now aged out of your policy. You got your policy when you were in your 30s and your 40s, and now you're almost 70 years old, which is the max for a term life insurance, right? So now you're saying, okay, well, how much do you need? That's going back to question number one. And you say, well, I still want $250,000. Here's the thing about life insurance. Life insurance goes by your age and your health. Your age and your health. So the younger you are, the cheaper your premium is, the higher amount of payout that you can receive. The older you get, the more money you're going to pay, the less amount of insurance policy you're going to receive. Does that make sense? And so some people may say, okay, well, that's not going to do me any good. Well, there are other types of life insurance policies, like those index universal life insurance plans that you're able to get, but then they're a little tricky. So you got to make sure that if you're going to work with a broker, that you get someone that's very knowledgeable about how those index universal life policies work. They're different ones, okay? And so if you're still wanting that 150,000, 250,000, then that's an area that you'll want to look at as well, okay? I'm just saying that you just got to be careful though, because it can be very tricky if it's not set up right. Just putting it out there, okay? So the next thing is that you want to make sure that you get a policy that you can afford. That's the other thing. You had a policy that you paid very cheaply. You were young, you were healthy, you only paid, maybe 30, 40 bucks for it. And now that you're in your 70s, you're finding that those policies are now costing a whole lot more. Well, not only just your age, but also your health condition. This is why we always tell people it's important to get life insurance, because I'm a healthy person, right? I mean, the most I have is like high blood pressure. But I don't know if tomorrow I'm going to be diagnosed with something. So I want to make sure, God forbid anything happens, I can say, whew, thank God I got my life insurance policy. Because if I'm diagnosed with something now, I'm already covered. I have policies that cover me prior to the illness. Do you understand? So when people tell me that they want to wait, oh, we'll wait till tomorrow. You don't know what you'll be diagnosed with tomorrow, next month. So that's why it's important not to put it off if you can help it. We are good and healthy today, and tomorrow maybe not so much. Okay. Not only your health, the medications that go along with it. Okay, so that can also affect what you're going to pay for your policy, for your premium, are those medications. Even if the medication is filled and you don't take it, that could also count against you. Okay, so let's not put off tomorrow what we can do today. So we went over to decide how much coverage you need, decide how long you're going to need the life insurance policy for, and then how much you can afford. That's very important, because we want to make sure that your policy doesn't lapse. There's too many instances where financial situations happen, and especially a person who's retiring, they are receiving less income unless they're receiving a good pension. But let's just assume most people are just getting like their social security check, and now their wife is also getting a social security check, or maybe it's just yourself. In any case, your income is a lot less than when you were working, right? So you want to make sure that that policy is affordable to your income. So an example is, if you're bringing home $1,500 a month, then your policy premium should be within 3 to 4% of that income that you're bringing home. Okay, so, and if for whatever reason your expenses increase, and you're still receiving the same income, and you have children, let's say you have responsible adult children, well, you can go to them, if you have that relationship, and say, listen, I can no longer afford the policy. Can you now become the policy owner? So you can start off being the policy owner, but you can make someone else the policy owner and make the payments. You can do that. That is a thing. A lot of people may not know that. So they can be your beneficiary, and they can also pay for the policy. Okay. The other thing is also making sure, what is it that you want to cover? What is it that you want to happen with this money? This is where wills and trusts come in. Do you have a will or a trust in place? People think that it's just about wills and trusts. I talked about that on my last video about wills and trusts. So they think it's enough to say, okay, well, I have a life insurance policy. I have $150,000. Mary, you're the beneficiary, and you're going to know exactly what to do. So tie it all together. Make sure that you get your life insurance in place. Make sure that you get your will or your trust in place, so your family members will know what to do. And I'm going to tell you why. Because if you make, let's just say, for example, one of your children the beneficiary, and they get that policy, and you needed some of that money for your burial, they could decide whether or not they want to spend any of the money on you for your burial. There's nothing you can tell a person what to do. I mean, you're gone now. They can do whatever they want with the money. So you want to make sure that you're being honored, and you want to make sure that your requests are very clear what you want with the money. Do you want the money to pay for your burial? Do you want the money to pay off your expenses? Do you want your money to pay off the mortgage, depending on the amount of life insurance that you receive? So be very clear along with the life insurance policy what it is that you want it for. Okay. Again, if you can't afford the policy, please let one of your family members know, because the last thing a loved one needs is to know that, God forbid, something happened to you, the policy lapsed. I cannot tell you how many times that this has happened in families where they are not checking up on a regular basis, and they are going through the policies. Now, the next thing you want to know is, should I get term or or whole life insurance? That's a very good question. So usually my answer to that is, when you're younger, it's good just to get a term life insurance policy, because hey, it's cheap, and it can last you for 30 years. So yeah, go ahead and get a term policy. It's when you get older, you may want to consider getting a whole life policy. Why? Because it lasts your whole life. People are living a lot longer. Okay. People are living past the age of 70, 80, and 90. So I've seen people where they're 70 years old and they're getting a 10-year term life. That makes no sense to me. I'm sorry. That just makes no sense to me. I'd rather invest in a whole life insurance, but I get it. You want to get a higher amount, you're going to pay for that amount. But I would, my opinion, I would probably say you might want to get a whole life insurance policy to ensure that you're going to be covered, because anything can happen to you in between the ages of 70 until the time of your passing. You can have dementia, you could be incapacitated. Just imagine if you had a 10-year term life and now you're incapacitated or you're not of sound mind and body, and nobody can renew the life insurance policy for you. I want people to think about those things. Okay. So at that age, if you're getting up in age like 65, I would say even 65 and above, when the term life insurance policy is out, it only pays out to age 69, 70. At that point, you're going to want to pivot over probably to a whole life insurance policy. You may not need as much. At that point, you just probably need it just to, for your burial and just a few expenses. And you want to leave a little something for the kids. I get it. In that case, you probably can get a couple of policies. But again, you got to think about that expense. You got to think about what it costs. You got to think about how is your health at the time. Are you healthy? And along with your age. And also if you're a smoker. If you're a smoker, then of course you're instantly going to pay a much higher amount. And if you're on medications, I talk to customers all the time who are on a lot of medications, and all those things play into when we're doing your policy for you. Okay, so these are the things that I want you to consider. So, should you get a term life? Again, should you get a whole life? Again, if you're younger, yes, absolutely get that term life. It's cheaper, it's straightforward. God forbid anything happen. Here's the other thing I want to say. I'm seeing too many of our young people without a life insurance policy. Why are we afraid to get a policy on our young people? We don't know if our young people will go from health, because not only old people go from health, a lot of young people are passing away from health. They pass away from accidents. Things happen. And I hear one of the things, I think I said in my other video as well, is that people say, well, I don't want to profit off of my children. You're not profiting off your children. You're just trying to avoid double devastation, the devastation of losing your loved one and the devastation of having to come and find money. I just saw another GoFundMe today of a mother who lost 3 children. And now they're asking for a GoFundMe. It just cringes me every time I hear about that. That young lady policy probably would have cost about $20 a month. I kid you not. Less than $1 a day to cover her. Even if you see that you're a grandmother, I'm talking to the grandmas and the grandpas now. If you see that your daughter is a single parent and has 3 kids, please go get a life insurance policy on her. Please go get a policy, because more than likely grandma or grandpa is going to going to have to be the one to raise those children. So you can be the policy owner, mom. You could be the policy owner, dad, on those children. Just don't leave them out there. We just don't think about those things. Every day I hear about young people passing away and not having the money to bury them. We just think, oh, yeah, we just got all this time. And unfortunately, that is not the case. And let me tell you, I am a mother. Of course, I do not want to lose my children. No children should have to go before their parents. But unfortunately, sometimes that's the case. You want to make sure that your children are covered. Okay. And so I try to make this as simple as possible. There's a lot of other questions or concerns. And then the last thing is number 5 is make sure that you get a good insurance broker that you can trust, a good advisor. Get a good advisor, somebody that really has your best interest at heart and not just trying to just sign you up to make the big money. Because at the end of the day, like I said, your policy should be budget friendly. We should be asking you all these questions. What do you want the money for? And making sure that we are in alignment and we're on the same page, and also giving you the reality of what it is. And so I know a lot of times people see commercial and they say, oh, you can get $500,000 for $10. And that just depends on the type of insurance. That could be an accidental policy. I'm not sure. I don't call those numbers. I don't call those phone numbers, but I'm thinking that if it's that large amount, maybe it's accidental. But young people, they can get insurance for a lot of insurance for a little amount of money. Do you understand that? So remember, the older you get, the less amount of insurance because now you're more of a risk. And so I'm just being blunt and honest with you and telling you the real. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to me. You can always book an appointment, or if you just even want to do a quote for yourself, I also have a link in my bio as well. But I just want to make sure that you understand what you're getting into when you are looking for life insurance and the questions that you should ask. There's some great companies out here, and it's about making sure that you're happy and that your family's going to be taken care of. And the last thing I would always say is make sure that your children or whoever the beneficiary is know that they are the beneficiary. Okay, that's all. That's the last thing that's very important. Name that beneficiary and let them know, or let a person know, or let it be known in your will or your trust. Okay. So I hope this was some great information, and go get that policy. Go get protected. It's for the living, it's not for you. All right. Till the next time.